Hello there, friendos. It's your old pal Chad Dukes, and this is my producer, Gigantor. If you're liking what you're seeing here on the Chad Dukes Show YouTube channel, well, we sure would love it if you'd click like on this video, then maybe hit subscribe. Hit that little bell thing. Isn't that what you do? You hit the bell, and then we spam your phone. We sure would appreciate it. And if you don't want to do that, well, then don't. Those seem to be the options. Take care.
This is Radiofile with Chad Dukes.
It is episode 3 of Radiofile with Chad Dukes. I'm Big Shooter. Thank you very much for checking this new podcast out. It's been a lot of fun. And, if you're going to start an episode about radio, you should probably have on the guys that you did a lot of radio with at some point. I'm very excited to have Oscar, Santana, and Drab T-shirt from the Big O and Duke Show on with me this week. Good to see you, gentlemen.
Good to be here, Dukes.
Hey, Fuchs.
Yeah, it's
Thank you.
As we're taping this, you boys got up on a Sunday morning, so this is like church. It's like church for the three of us.
Shockingly, 2 of us were on time.
Yeah, 2 of us. One of us, not so much.
Yeah, really weird.
One of us showed up wearing something that maybe in 1996 would be appropriate, but that's fine. No big deal.
You guys got to get up on the latest fashion.
Is that the latest?
Is that
fashion?
new?
Definitely.
Really?
What is that?
Yes.
That's from Britch's Great Outdoors, I think.
This is from South Moon Under.
I think before Land's End.
That was the color scheme for Britch's
Of course
Great
it
Outdoors.
is. I think before Land's End went out of business, they jettisoned that in a capsule to Drab T-shirt's house. I'm kidding. You got a pocket? Look at you there.
Yeah, I'm ready to go.
You can
All
carry
seasons.
things. It's only 150 degrees out today, and Drab's, of course, dressed for mid-fall. It's good to have you guys. Of course, we host a podcast every week called Big O and Dukes, and that was a show. And I say this on my radio show. It's a very odd spot doing afternoons on the same station where we did evenings and middays. But, and Drab, you know this, there's a whole bulk of the listeners that have no knowledge of that whatsoever. Like, there's the P ones, there's the John the Pampas that have like been there since day one.
Right.
But it's weird, like, having to remind people of what that station was before you just tuned in to hear what the Redskins were doing.
Probably 90% new audience.
You think so?
Yes. 10 years later, definitely.
Yeah,
It's just a few stragglers.
but also, I would say the medium that you guys are in, and I think you've said it best in the past, both of you, that what we were a part of was like true personality-driven radio. And what you do, Dukes, is, I would say, for sports radio, personality-driven radio.
As much as you can.
But you have parameters you have to work in.
Right. I think that they're tuning in for, they want to hear the biggest sports stories, and they smash those. And I've never been able to fully commit to that. Like, I always want to make it as much about me as I possibly can, as most hosts do, I think, because of that's... when we tuned into radio shows, you're listening to Don and Mike or whatever, you're tuning in to see what happened to Don over the weekend.
Yeah.
You care about that. And that's kind of the type of radio you want to talk about. And I think the Junkies still incorporate a lot of that, Drab. But how many radio shows does Jim Rome ever say, I did this, or me and my wife got into this argument, or I was cursing out a guy at the Piggly Wiggly?
No.
Right?
not. No.
There's none of that.
It's all
He doesn't
top,
tell his clones that.
A1 News.
Yeah. So for those that haven't, because this audience has, the podcast is a pretty good audience thus far. Maybe you're not aware. Drab, of course, produces the Junkies now, and Oscar owns a podcast studio and runs it, but also continues to do the Mike O'Mara show. And then Mike was on last episode, which was very cool. I wanted to ask you guys both this, and answer in any order you'd like. How different are the other shows than the show that we do together? Like, how the vibe and like the energy, and maybe even, because I know Drab has on many occasions stated he likes the Junkies better.
Yes.
And I think it's just...
I thought it was just... I always took that as personally. Like in his personal life.
I think probably... I don't want to put words in his mouth, but personally and professionally. But I don't mean any disrespect. I don't think Oscar... I don't know if it's even prefer... Your role on Mike's show is so much different than your role on our show.
It's completely different.
Well, how different is that?
I was stepping into a legacy show.
Right.
And from the get-go, I knew, and I don't know if it's necessarily to my benefit, but I've never been the type of personality that wants it's got to be about me. It's got to be about me. It's got to be about me. And I think that you would probably attest to that.
Absolutely.
That it's the collective win. And when Mike and I started working together, I knew I was walking into the Mike O'Mara show.
Right.
And I went as far as to say, like, if this doesn't work and it's awkward, we shouldn't we shouldn't work together on the air.
How long was the feeling out process? Because you and I love Mike, and Mike has been as good to us as anyone in the business, and I got nothing but good things to say about Mike O'Mara. But I remember going in with just you and me and doing the radio show with him, and it's like, how do we do this? Because like he has such an enormous personality. There's not a lot of room for everybody else. That was just when you and I would go in there when he would let us come in and do bits on his afternoon show.
Still remember you when we were sitting in for, I would say he was maybe on vacation, the one of two vacations he took that year. Yeah. And you said, "Hello, America," because we were talking to a national audience.
Well, Mike O'Mara's show was nationally syndicated. I think they had lots of one of the reasons. So it went the Don and Mike show, nationally syndicated, and they kept Mike in a bulk of the cast and kind of kept most of that syndication deal going.
So for me, that transition from at that point our show to the Mike O'Mara Show podcast as the station to flip formats, in 1998? 2008. And
That was July 2009.
2009. It feels like forever ago, right?
How do you know that, Drab?
Because it was exactly 2 years after we started.
Really?
Yeah.
Which is the longest run, by the way, Big One Duke's ever had. Yeah. You think about that and how long we've done this podcast and how little radio we actually did.
So it's true.
We can talk about that.
We've actually eclipsed our radio career.
Oh my God, tenfold.
Many times over.
It's unbelievable.
So you look at, I guess, as of July 2009, Mike's podcast starts in December 2009, and I probably wasn't comfortable till, I would say, December 2019.
That's what I was about to say. I was like, it's going to be way like, well, look, but it's not only you joining Mike's show. Mike is a titan. Like Mike was, if you're talking about like top 100 radio personalities of all time, O'Mara's on that list. And he got fired. They told him, "We don't want your services anymore." And he wasn't a podcast guy. Like, we were podcast people. You and I had done a podcast in Baltimore.
2005.
We used to drive down the Junkies events and pass out flyers for our podcast. Like, we were selling mixtapes out of the trunk.
Literally.
Yeah.
Like bootleg.
Heard.
Bootleg.
Remember Valerie Wonder yelled at us for doing that
She's
one
like,
time.
"Stop doing this.
You gotta stop doing this. It's classless." She was a promotions director at the radio station.
I'm sure someone yelled at her to yell at us.
But the point that I bring up is that it's not just you joining the Mike O'Mara Show, which is this entity. It's a huge transition period for that guy that had never been through anything like that.
I'm glad you brought that up. And in fairness to Mike, I would say it took roughly three years for him to even start trusting me,
right?
Because he's been burned so many times left and right. So
it sounds like doing a show with Don was really tough. Yeah. That's what it sounds like from people I've spoken to.
It could have been, right?
Yeah.
So about 3 years in, I felt a little more comfortable. But as far as Mike is concerned, a little backstory is when the station flipped formats from hot talk to sports talk, and I hadn't really wrapped my mind around not being in radio when the station flipped formats. I thought I was going to go work somewhere else, and it just didn't. The job wasn't the job that I thought it was going to be, and I was positive. I remember looking at you and saying, "He's going to be doing an afternoon drive on PGC in like a month." I was positive that was going to set up perfectly for you to do something. Do you know
like
what
that.
happened when I walked into that meeting?
No,
I think we've never.
I don't think I've ever talked about it with you.
The gentleman who was PD at the time.
WPGC is the hip hop station here. Oscar's got kind of a multiracial look.
Yeah, they needed more diversity. So the company brings me over there, and all the managers that play are not managers now, so it's a different ball game. And the PD management, as Drab is now, at that time looked at me and said, "Are you ready to live the lifestyle?" That's the first thing that he said to me, and he said,
"Was he pointing at his crotch at the time?" No,
it wasn't backroom casting.
Then I'm confused.
He started naming off urban brands, like clothing brands.
Oh, I thought you meant like Rockaware.
Yes.
Okay.
Iceberg. All these. He goes,
I don't know that one.
Like I said,
Sean John. I'm out.
And I realized right away. I said, I thought the station was possibly going more top 40.
Right.
And he said, we're going to turn that dial slowly to see what the market fits. But are you ready to live the lifestyle now? He kept on doubling down.
Did he want you to wear this stuff?
He wanted me to act more black.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
That's what it came down to.
Yeah.
And as this conversation was going down, I realized right away that this guy has no idea who I am.
Right.
He just saw a Latino walk through his door that was dressed a little preppy.
Can you imagine the conversation reversed? If someone would have been trying to say that you need to, as a rock station, you need to act more white. It would not have gone over well.
No.
Well, you also can't look. You can fake a little.
Oh, I wasn't ready to live the lifestyle. It wasn't me. It wasn't who I am.
Yeah.
And it wasn't about being more urban, quote unquote.
But there's a lot of radio DJs that fake it.
Like a Drabby, I get it, but this is
especially in music. I think in music it's way different.
Meals, country guys.
This
they're
is
all,
the difference. At this point,
Dave Pratt in Phoenix went from a rock station to a country station, and as soon as he did, he was a cowboy.
Right. right.
In fairness,
More identities than I do.
that was great for Dave Pratt. It wasn't who I was.
Right.
It wasn't my choice.
Well, that's a great point. Is there's people probably that would be fine with, hey, we need you to take your top off in this movie if you want to be in this movie, and there's people that would say, sure, I get to be in the movie, and there's people that say, I'm not comfortable with that.
And I just didn't have it in me to fake that component of the job. So I said, thank you, no, thank you, and I went what I would say within a couple months to a private sector job. Just
when
like
was the first time you talked to Mike though about doing that show? Like, did you have that in your pocket while you were going and talking to PGC, or
no? I had nothing.
Okay.
I talked to Mike. I would say maybe.
Did you approach him?
Yeah, I approached him
Because the podcast was your idea, right?
Yeah, I approached him. I would say he called me out of the blue. He said, I saw, I see you called me, because I called him a little while after we got fired.
Right.
And he goes, hey, he's like, what's going on? I was like, look, not for nothing. You have I've been following this trend across the country. You have everything it takes right now to do a podcast. And I think it's a good business opportunity. I'm looking at some different job opportunities that are actually happening in Manassas. So if you ever want to meet and talk about it, that's great.
We did a show in Manassas
Yes.
for a while, everybody.
And
Oscar called it the Tech Corridor.
I called him roughly.
It was the Cracker Barrel Corridor.
It was the Manassas Tech Corridor.
Get out of here, dude. There's nothing over there except dead bodies.
Dude, that was 5 years that we were there.
I know.
So
I miss those days.
I ended up getting that marketing job, and I called Mike literally, I would say every couple weeks, and because he'd be like, yeah, just check in a couple. Like he would tell me to check back in,
Right.
And then,
Because he was probably working, trying to find gigs.
well, he said my agent says everything's gonna be all right, and he had a payout. He had like a 6-month payout, and
I've never gotten that.
well, it was a different world, right?
I know.
And
The Opie and Anthony deal, though, where you're on the beach for 2 years getting full salary.
and he wasn't going to jeopardize that, and I didn't blame him for that. So I went my trajectory. I talked to Chad about a podcast, and in fairness to Chad, he said, "Look, I gotta get my sea legs with this LeVar Duke show."
I was in my own set of circumstances.
I think CK had told him just like hit pause, figure out when, like establish yourself here, and then you
Sure.
can go do whatever you want afterwards. So I talked to Mike a few more times, like over the weeks, and just touch base with him. And I thought he just wasn't interested. So I started working at this place called Earthwalk. Chad showed with LeVar Takes Off. Drabby,
Air quotes.
at that point, is the producer of the LeVar and Duke show.
My executive producer.
Yes.
Drab t-shirt.
And
Acting executively.
Mike calls me like a day before his contract, his payout was done. He's like, can you meet for dinner? I meet with him and his wife at Uno's Pizzeria right up the street.
Classy.
And I said,
I love
'cause
Uno's.
I said I could do an evening dinner like 6:30, 7 o'clock. He goes, oh yeah, we'll drive down. They live in Manassas as well. And
He lives in a different part of Manassas than we were doing the
oh
show.
my God,
I know.
yes, the nice part. And he shows up. We sit down, and he says, "What's a podcast?"
Yeah, that's probably the way I would have assumed it went.
And I broke everything down to him.
And now it's incredibly successful. And it's one of those things where people always come up to me. I don't know how much you get at Oscar. Like, why don't you guys try to get Big O and Dukes back on the air? It's like, well, it's tough. And this is going to sound arrogant when both of us are successful doing something else. Like, I feel very lucky that we've been able to figure out a way to keep doing the show, despite the fact that the three principals are very successful doing other things.
Have full-time jobs.
Yeah, and that's now for you. It's double the case because you're the guy running the building that's producing other podcasts. Drab, we mock you a lot for that, for liking the Junkies, because there was straight shoot. Oscar and I got an offer to do mornings to compete against the Junkies, and I went to Drab and I said, "We'd love to have you. I can get you a raise." And he said no, because he enjoys doing the show with the Junkies, which I respected him for.
And his foresight, he must have the third eye.
Yeah, it was the right call. It was the right call, sure. It certainly
Playing
was.
the long game.
But like, what is the other than I'm?
Did you have any pause or hesitation?
Oh, yeah, did you consider the offer?
Please.
Well, sure, because of course I like doing the show. But the first thing is I have a different relationship with the Junkies than Chad does. I work on the show, so I wouldn't be interested in going against them, leaving their show and being part of.
I'm not interested in going. I mean, I wasn't. The impetus wasn't to compete against the Junkies. I love the Junkies.
I know you do, but
that's
what at the end of the day, that's what it would have been.
Well, it was mornings and it was more money.
You felt like it was betrayal?
Well, definitely a part of that, but also I like working on the Junkies.
Okay, but that's the truth.
See,
The first part makes no sense. It's a business.
Makes sense.
No, because you could have said yes, and then and in fairness, the deal never completely came through, as you hear us here on this podcast.
Right.
By the way,
the deal never went through.
You can hear the show on the radio.com app.
Yes.
It has a rewind button.
It does. You've heard about that?
Yeah.
Somehow that has escaped me.
Drabby, was it a conversation? Because this is how I know that it would have been a serious kind of just, I really need to consider this. I got to involve the stakeholders in my life, like my wife, my family, maybe a trusted advisor, ex-girlfriend. Were any of those people at least consulted?
No, I mentioned it to nobody. I thought about
didn't consider it.
I thought about it on the drive home. That was about it.
He probably was listening to LeVar and Dukes and said, I want nothing to do with anything that sounds like that.
That was actually a crossroads for Big O and Dukes.
What?
It was a big deal, that offer.
It was a huge deal.
Because if that deal didn't go through...
Do you know how much they offered me?
Yeah, you told me.
I did?
We all talked about it.
How much they offer you?
It was a fraction of that price.
Oh.
Yes.
We talked about that?
Yeah, because I could still do Mike's show. That was part of the deal.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, so as long as I kept that income and I could do that show and I could do our show.
We wouldn't be still doing that show, though, is the problem.
No, but I'm saying, that's back then.
Yeah, okay.
And I remember at that point and this is the straight shoot. I remember telling the gentleman who was courting us from the other radio station. I was like, look, man, like I was about to go to back to school to business school.
Right.
If this happens, that means I can't go.
Right.
And he goes, absolutely. Like,
it's a big deal.
There's no way you can go to school, miss a Friday on a morning show. I said, no, I get that. I'm just letting you know, like, this is a decision I'm making. I'm in to do this project. But if it doesn't happen, like, I'm not doing
also, but it'd be Oscar doing it. It'd be Big O and Dukes is not a sports show.
No.
Like, we talk about sports, but
I was under the assumption they were going to let us do what we wanted.
Maybe, but also there were things working against us. Primarily, the Junkies have dominated for 20 minutes. I don't think they wanted us to beat the Junkies. I think they wanted us to take a chunk of the listeners,
to contend, market share,
and then hopefully bring them over to that side because we weren't going to beat them on that station.
Look, if you're looking at from the outside looking in, the optics of that. We were not the Junkies. We never were. We never been. That's not what we're striving for. Success-wise, yeah, who wouldn't want that run? Who wouldn't want that life? From a radio standpoint. For me, it was more like I get to do a show with my boys on the radio again.
Well, that was what was the most appealing part about it.
And I got to tell you that, like, that not happening in a weird effing way was probably the best thing that could have happened.
But you're letting him off the hook. Why? Damn it. Why do you like doing the show with the Junkies where you're just the producer,
right?
More than here where
you're like a host.
Well chronicled, he gets a third of the money. You're a third over here. What is it?
Well, it's not that I like him one more than the other necessarily, but that is my full-time job, and I'm a part of that family just as much as I'm a part of this family. Now, on air, maybe not as much, but
do you hate this family?
No, I love this family, but this family, we have a different relationship, right? Like we totally different shows.
Sure.
Like stuff that happens on this show would never happen on the Junkies, right? Like we do deep dives into really hurting each other's feelings on the show.
True, that's a great
point. We really try
to
tear each other down.
It's not a healthy.
So it's not healthy, right? Like
ecosystem.
I get really sometimes I get really angry and frustrated. Yeah. I go home and you're so frustrated at the world because you just spent an hour screaming at each other. The Junkies, that would never happen. Now I'm not as involved over there. I'm much more behind the scenes,
right?
But it's more peaceful.
You're right. It's a happier place.
Okay. Same time.
You're right. Think about it. And just for those of you that are new and just hearing this for the first time, we're in an annex studio, remote, that's just dedicated to Big O and Dukes, and somehow. This studio, in the main part of the broadcast area of the studio, has three paintings of three of the closest people in Chad's life.
Yeah,
that are oil paintings that really the likeness of those people, which is Drab T-shirt, myself, and Beau LeBlanc, two primaries and one tertiary character of the program or the Big O Nukes universe, are the most unflattering paintings or pictures you could ever put up of friends.
Yeah, see, I don't agree with you. I think you're trying to lump yourself into what has happened to Drab. Drab's got I'm looking right now at a picture of Drab's butthole. I mean, there is a 6-foot painting. Is that what you're saying? Like, if you were on the Junkies, they never would have a painting commissioned of your bare ass without telling you?
I could probably count on one hand the amount of times I've been angry at the Junkies.
Really?
I could probably count 5 times last Tuesday I was angry at you.
All right.
You know what I mean? Not that I don't love doing the show. Of course I do, but it's much more stressful.
But if you're looking at it from the outside in,
right?
Like, and if you're I will say that the best part of this show is honestly, it's a comfort level.
Yeah, but he's riding the bench on the Warriors, where he could be the lead scorer of the Brooklyn Nets. That's the difference. He's not a Kyrie Irving type, you know. He wants to be a Lawrence Funderburk.
Well, also,
I want a 15-year career. You're right.
Drabby's risk averse. It's fine.
Gotta burn hot, man.
It's like he wavered on starting a card shop. Like, that's not who he is.
Well, for those people that don't know, we did have to bully Drab into leaving Arizona to come out. And I always don't think we've ever gotten enough gratitude for that, because he wouldn't be the Junkies producer if we didn't bully him into coming out here to be our producer. So the stuff that you say you don't like about the show is directly responsible for a lot of the success you've had.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I love this show.
You said that this is a mean place and that's a nice place.
He's probably right. Now, in his defense, I think that's a fair characterization.
No, I agree. I just said the building speaks for itself.
There's a shirt somewhere.
You have to remember, though, that when Eric came in and talked to me, I was stapling papers.
Gotcha.
To be his producer. That was 8 years ago.
Yeah.
So as much as you guys saved, my radio career,
the Junkies
they did as well.
They did more
when
for you.
When Eric came and talked to me, Brett quit at the exact time because I was going to leave. I was
you got to
get
get
out
a
of
little
radio.
more clear. People don't know what you're talking about.
I was kicked off LeVar and Dukes. I was Chad's producer. There was a skirmish and
a skirmish. Now that word doesn't exist.
Show title?
Skirmish.
There was.
Skirmish.
There was a skirmish.
A skirmish. Okay. All right. Skirmish.
And I was reassigned within the radio station for over a year.
I think Squirmish is a character in the Battlestar Galactica universe. So you were on the beach technically because you were doing like.
Well, I mean, yeah,
you're relegated.
I was relegated.
Yes.
I was doing job interviews in Phoenix and in Cleveland for radio jobs, but
you would rock in Cleveland.
No, I was to be a sports producer. I turned that down. I didn't want to go to Cleveland.
Right.
Now that hurts Chad's
feelings. Hurts my feelings. I love Cleveland.
Yeah.
Jason Veazey hooked me up with a job in Phoenix. I think for the guys that.
Oh, how you know him?
Through the show.
Okay.
Yeah. This show.
I just wanted to make sure, that we were all clear.
How many years are you going to take credit for my life? Forever?
Yeah.
just like our parents, man. Like we did the hard work.
Well, who deserves the credit? You?
Well, I mean, I deserve some.
Do you have a hard work ethic? I would say when you want, you do.
It's me.
You do.
No, Drab is affable. He has a very interesting look, and people are drawn to him.
That's what I'm going for.
He's not a very good producer.
You know what? You're front of house. Like you're.
I don't like to get my hands dirty.
Yeah, you're good.
I get that. He's a guy that likes to hand the dude that does the wet works, like the placard with who to kill on it. I understand that. Where were we? Oh, so Eric Bickle, you were stapling papers, and he came and said, "Do you want to be the producer of them?"
So the Junkies saved me just as much as you guys did.
That is really insulting.
That's hurtful.
It is.
No, because you wouldn't have even been in the building if it wasn't for us. So that takes precedent.
But I was in the
everything.
basement. I was back in the mailroom.
Yeah, but you didn't even get fired. Here's what he's being completely misleading about. Anywhere else, he's fired for what he did.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to get into it. We referenced it on our show. But because... What do you mean that?
I did.
What do you mean that?
It was a team. It wasn't all me.
Well, I got suspended, but I'm the talent. They're not going to fire me for that.
Of course. All right.
I mean, I was...
You make me sound like I'm an animal or something.
Well, he didn't get off scot-free. I remember being at Glory Days drinking beers in the middle of the day.
Also, what happened to Salty
Dukes.
Drizzle? What happened to... Producers get fired.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Nothing was said. It was so overblown. It's 10 years later, whatever it is. Nothing was said.
What are you talking about?
What was said in the Facebook message?
The transgression?
The transgression.
It was
so minor, it was barely should even been raised an eyebrow.
Also, I will say this, 100% true.
Yeah.
I just want to put that out
I remember what was said. I think
the quote was, "Yeah, the show's not very good today."
Well, I think there was more about preparation.
It was the back and forth.
Yeah, I think there was like a preparation question.
I don't remember exactly, but
well, there was one of these.
Yeah.
There was a binder filled with show prep. Yeah. Maybe that wasn't opened that day.
Or most days.
I don't want to get into it. It's not a big deal. I'm happy for the time. That made my career better.
Yeah.
It's all great. But here's what I thought is that if I'm a manager, what I want to do is find the people that were responsible for disseminating that unrest and weed them out.
It's easier to fire a producer.
It's always the producer that gets fired
than the talent, because talent has different type of contract.
Sure, I got that.
Here's what Drabby can also attest to, though. If all you have to do in radio to have your revenge is just to wait. If you can stay employed long enough, that person will be gone.
Someone will step in it.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. So, I don't know. How do we get here? Oh.
Well, because he won't be grateful.
No, I don't want to attack. What is it? So you're just saying that they're nicer, or is it the way they're show? Because this show's just so organic. And there's so much chemistry that I would assume there's less pressure as a producer because they could just riff for 4 hours and fill the time.
I never thought about the power numbers.
Yeah, it's an insulated kind of, and by the way, completely unique situation in radio that you have 4 guys that are just going to be able to,
they grew up
bounce forever.
No, it's got its own set of challenges, much different than this show. But as far as blow-ups or anger there's just none of that. They're so laid back that because they're confident in who they are.
But some of that stuff annoys you. I know that.
Sure, it does at times, but they've never had any hardship in radio, right? It's always ludicrous speed, right?
That's a good point.
Full speed ahead, never a speed bump.
Getting more TV shows.
So nothing bothers them because they know everything's going to be okay.
Yeah, we know everything's not going to be okay.
Yeah, we know that the sledgehammer's coming right around the corner.
Do you still live in a world of despair?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, for the most part. I've never found the comfort that Drab's talking about, even with the longevity of how much time I've been on the show. Because the ratings will go down, I'm like, why wouldn't they clip me? Like, why wouldn't they try something else? It's just always something you expect.
But that's the nature of broadcasting in general.
I would assume most radio people are very insecure. That's what Drab's talking about. I know Omero's insecure. Dramo's insecure. All these guys we look up to. Howard Stern's probably the most insecure person on earth. Tip of the spear. Who's not Corolla?
No.
It's weird when you stumble across someone that is absolutely 100%.
He doesn't care.
It's very odd.
I'll do something else.
And you can their delivery's different.
Yeah.
It's just more comfortable.
Matter of fact.
So last week on the Junkies, we had a live read going into commercial break. Mm-hmm. We go, all right, Eric, you have paisanos here. Mm-hmm. Get it ready. Eric goes, we're going to break? All right, let me tell you about Reynolds, the real estate company that I'm working with.
Yeah.
And we're like, no, you're doing the wrong read. And he goes, on there. This is all on air. He goes, oh, I'm doing the wrong read here. Let me flip through my binder and find out, what am I doing here, guys? Paisanos? Then he does the read.
Yeah.
Right? And he goes, sponsors won't care. This is how we are. And I was so angry because he screwed it up so bad.
Yes.
Then I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, you know what? They got their money's worth. Paisanos got their money's worth because there was more attention drawn to the F up and just the cluster of the whole thing.
I resent that, though.
That it worked out perfectly. And that's the Junkies.
That he was right.
They can't mess up. It's impossible.
I spend so much time trying to have the read organically kind of mesh with the body of the show.
I listen to your show, and when you do it, it is a masterclass.
Thank you. That's very kind. But Drab's right. They just don't need to do that because it's just what people tune in for.
Because that mess up, literally, that even back and forth was just like, okay, paisanos, okay.
Yeah, because they're not tuning in they're just tuning in for the chemistry.
Yeah. That's another thing I should mention about this show, our show here, Big Elm Dukes.
Well, this is Radiofile with Chad Dukes.
I'm sorry. the cast here. This is why we get along so well.
Right, of course.
The correction. Big Owen Dukes, that chemistry, I have never found with anyone else.
Yeah, that's probably fair.
I just haven't.
That's fair.
And
I like to think I have chemistry with everyone else I do shows with, but it's a unique thing that we definitely have. And maybe I hate it. For those people that haven't listened to our show a lot, every single piece of production that Oscar and I have had in our radio careers is based around 2 different guys from 2 different worlds. And it's like, here's the big fat loudmouth guy, and here's the guy that's going out to the discotheque dressing like a woman. And people, I feel like hacky program directors are always trying to put those shows together. And I kind of resent we're one of those shows that works. I resent that. Now, that leads us to where this is the thing that I don't know if I have an answer to. And that's why I'm glad you guys are here. People ask us if we go back on the radio together at all time. I don't know if it'll ever happen just because the three of us are successful and there's only so many years left we have on this planet. I'd like to at some point. I've said that. How different would the show be from what it was when we were on the radio? And then how different do you think it would be from the podcast that has kind of existed in perpetuity for the past 11, 12 years?
I'll go first if that's okay. I think I would say we've made many changes to the podcast already. Just generally,
sure.
It was generally what is in style and what could honestly, what is okay, what is PC, what is not, how we attack subjects, what we can talk about. I would say that it would be different, but it wouldn't be. There would just be a couple of things that we tweak.
I would wonder what it would be if it was like a morning show. Like if they dropped this on like an active rock station and said, okay, you guys are going to play 4 songs an hour. Here's Ozzy Osbourne and Led Zeppelin and, whatever, Greta Van Fleet. And now you have to do a morning radio show for a rocker. Like, I wonder how that would work.
Well, I don't know about morning show, but I know that if this show was just dropped into like a new market,
like on a talk station?
Right, because I was there when you guys started in Phoenix. I was here when you guys started in DC. What I always think about is we were doing the podcast for many years, and we did a show one night on Sirius XM.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Right? And so it was a completely new audience to you guys, and you guys immediately went back to your roots of knowing how to do a radio show to engage an audience. It was you guys talking to each other. You set up topics. You took calls. There was no Matt Lawson in the audience.
Right.
There's no characters. You guys would go right back to that and then rebuild again from scratch.
Well, that's nice of you, but the way you do it is, I think you start. It's like, remember the first season of Seinfeld. It's awful. Because it's for every TV show, it's pretty awful because they have to establish the characters and they have to continue to sit there and beat you over the head with the characteristics. And I think that's what we always did a good job of, is we started by just being like, what are your 5 favorite condiments that you went on the table? But then eventually the characters, you can't force them. They have to develop themselves.
You're reintroducing yourself to the audience.
Yeah, I think we could do that. But what station exists? I think, is the Bone still a station in Florida?
Yes.
It is?
Yeah.
All right, if they put us there, we'd kill.
Yeah.
Like, if we ever found our way to like middays on that station, I think we would assassinate the entire market.
I think there are stations across the country.
Where?
Well, I would, these, especially owner-operator, like Middle America, I would say maybe Texas, that would really engage with what we do here.
Do they have a talk station? Because, Bob and Tom rules the middle of the country.
There's probably a rock station that has the primarily talk morning show.
Yeah.
There has to be.
I think in the years to come, there'll be more opportunities for shows like Big O and Dukes. Not necessarily like the Hot Talk in the Howard Stern format, because we all know that that's not coming back. But when I look at music radio in the future, I don't see it having much of an impact.
Well, it's moving to Spotify.
You look at the top ratings in men 25-54. They're not music stations,
right? But the spoken word is expensive, and what I'm saying is, like, it'd work. I still think it's the one that can get it, because everyone that has personalities has been proven that's what you need when you want to compete with all these places that have nonstop music and nonstop everything. But it's expensive. So if the ship is going down, ain't nobody going to buy a gigantic golden masthead for it so it looks great. I'm just worried that because cost cutting seems to be the letter of the day inside the radio business, who is going to invest in, we have to have 3-4 hour live shows.
Okay, like a talk superstation.
Yes,
is what you're saying.
4 maybe.
I think what you're talking about, cost cutting in the traditional sense, it would not work. But I think this new world of, you can do a radio show from anywhere in America,
right,
and you don't have to be in a traditional space or have a traditional footprint, and you can produce it, frankly, at a more economical level, where your producer can literally work from home.
Sure.
And produce a show. The talent can work from home. So if you were able to pull that talent from around the country into one space and just push it out and have a small footprint as far as, let's say, HQ.
Like Pandora or somebody doing this, or Spotify, or...
They are within that world, but if you're talking about traditional terrestrial radio, that if somebody had a license in a big market and wanted to take a swing.
You said if your producer's working from home, what if your producer is literally asleep a half an hour after the show? Like, what if a 4-hour nap begins a half an hour after the show begins? Do you think that would work?
That might be a problem.
That's a tough sell.
That might be a problem.
Talking about Brock?
Huh?
You talking about Brock?
I don't know. I'm just giving hypotheticals. You know how that goes.
But I believe that if a station wanted to do that, their infrastructure, that it would take to actually build this. Would not. So the problem with, and I'm not saying it's a problem, the issue that most large broadcast entities have is that this erosion for the portfolio for music stations, as Drab said, is this erosion to Spotify, Apple Music, all these other platforms that offer what they're offering on demand.
Sure.
Is eating away at their market share.
Okay, but why haven't, that's for 22-year-olds.
Yeah.
Why have they developed classic rock, like, developed in our lifetime? Like, there used to be a format called oldies. It doesn't exist anymore because people got too old. Classic rock is not classic rock anymore. Why aren't there stations now that are, this is nothing but 90s and 2000s hip hop? Like, this is nothing
radio
but
stations,
90s and 2000s rock and roll.
Like satellite
there's
stations.
plenty of satellite.
Yeah.
That's why people that don't have satellite radio, you're clueless. It's everything we're talking about because they can afford it. It's unbelievable. Why don't they start programming radio for us? Because there's still 10 to 15 to 20 years of profitability there for people that still would look to radio for that, and then they would appeal to that. Everything's just so homogenized. And then the other thing I was thinking of is what you were talking about with like a central hub or whatever. I swear to God, just the ability. I have a 2020 automobile. When I turn on the radio, I go bleep. There's 106.7 The Fan. Bleep. There's Willie's Roadhouse. If I want to listen to Joe Rogan, I still have to pull my fucking phone out, go to my iTunes or go to his website. It's 3 clicks. I got to sync up the Bluetooth until that S is right there in the middle where I can just bleep. There's Adam Carolla's show. I still think radio can win. Well, radio can be relevant because people are getting into their cars and they're just going to be in there for 35 minutes, and it's not worth flipping off the station.
Agreed. But what if they're not getting into their cars anymore?
Well, that's new. I mean, that's a new thing.
So we've
seen our ratings. They're not getting into the car anymore.
I'm thinking that the pendulum will swing. But the question that a lot of people are asking now is how many people across the country, and I'm not talking about the Twitters of the world that tell their employees they can work from home forever. I'm saying how many people or how many companies are saying, wow, our efficiency's through the roof. No one's like hanging out in the break room doing no work. Like, people are doing their jobs if it's possible.
But how many companies do you think are like that right now?
I don't know, but a lot of people, like a lot of articles I'm reading, is that we're not going to know for a couple of years now. But immediately, once these quarantine, I guess, sanctions get lifted across the country, there. Like, I've even talked to some business owners that had potential leases on the line for multi-hundred, like I would say, employee companies moving, that they decided to keep their employees at home as much as possible and not sign this new lease.
Well, that makes all the sense. Jeb, I have something to dovetail off that, but you had something you were about to say.
Well, just about the podcasting. That's how I feel. And we do a podcast, and we promote podcasts every day on 106.7 The Fan. I feel that way every single time I get in my car. I will never listen to Joe Rogan because I don't want to find it. Yeah. Right? Like, if it's if it's something that I really I'm into, then once a week I'll find it or something. But I'm so just want to zone out when I'm in the car. I just turn the key on, and whatever's playing there, I usually just listen to, and then I just scroll the little dial and find something else. But
and that's why I'm
not interested in looking at my phone and swiping and typing stuff. It's too much.
And that's what they say about why when you're in a rental car, it's so valuable if someone leaves it on your station, because the next person is going to get in and they're not going to change the station because they're lazy, like Drab.
Well, or they don't know the radio. They're just listening.
Well, think about this, though, Santana. The building that we are in, and I was talking with the VB this past weekend about this. We're in this monstrous building in downtown D.C. And I remember everyone was like, we got to be there because that's where the news is and that's what happens. And the tab on this place, I can't even imagine what it is. And it is completely unnecessary. It is superfluous. Every single person has been doing the shows from home. There's nobody in that building. The salespeople don't need to be in that building. There needs to be a small room with all the engineering stuff for all the different radio stations and probably one or two studios if you got to come in or you got to record stuff. And you don't need anything to have for a radio station, not a podcast. And then you have to have the sticks, of course. You have to have those.
Most importantly, it can be in the suburbs.
Anywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Where you're talking, a rent is the third of the price.
Do you remember Oscar and I were when we were working at HFS and they put the XM building in, and it was in the hood, like it was in. You don't want to. You sped up to go through there, and they bought, FedEx Field down there. They bought an enormous place, and they built a huge complex. Like, go to wherever the poorest neighborhood is. Get as much parking as you can possibly
get. A ton of tax incentives to reinvigorate the space.
And there it is.
That whole area is now, you can't recognize it.
It can be anywhere.
Brand new neighborhood. It's nuts.
But you don't have to be in the city. Drab's right. Like, you put it in Manassas. Put it anywhere. In the suburb outside of wherever you live.
Maybe Centerville.
I'm fine with that. They got tippies.
Yeah.
Oscar, you talked about having hosts all over the country. You still have to have a local host. I mean, that is the appeal of radio.
I would agree to that.
You got to have guys.
For terrestrial,
you have a ceiling with guys.
For terrestrial, 100%. Like programming wise, it has to be local. Right. But so I guess my logic is that if you have the majority of your nucleus of the show in that city, and you have one guy that has to move away because his mom's sick or he wants to take care of his dad or whatever it may be.
The Kevin and Bean bit.
Yeah. If that's an option, or else that guy's not going to be on your show, that's a big deal. Like, that's a big option.
Yeah, but Drab's right. If those Barstool guys are outrageously successful, but I flip on the local because I know that, Grant's going to be talking about the Redskins wide receiver that just got arrested, or, Cakes is going to be talking about the Capitals fill in the blank. You're not going to get that from any of these national shows.
But I guess Barstool might be, and maybe subconsciously I was thinking about Barstool. They have hosts around the country.
Yeah.
Going back to the mothership, and
they have little pockets everywhere.
Right? Where you're like,
right, but they're not going to be talking about the incident on Georgetown Pike.
No, they're talking about the national stories. There's a place for that.
Yeah, there is a place for that, but I believe it has a ceiling. That you can't ever you can't break through that.
You don't feel connected to it.
Yeah, there's no.
That's fair. I get excited when they talk about something like DC based.
The connection you feel to local media hosts, it's weird because radio. And I'm not even talking about television. I'm talking about radio because it's so interpersonal. At least in our format, there's a lot of guys that don't let you in at all. Like we have these Jive Turkey radio guys on. You don't know anything about this guy. He's just a weird voice that can spit stats at you. How would you ever feel connected to that guy? But the type of radio we're talking about, it's why we get so many weirdos. You don't get nearly as many weirdos in sports talk. And sports talk weirdos are just mad at you for not agreeing on their sports takes. Right. Like weirdos in art, they show up in your backyard.
Oh, it's personal.
They're leaving notes on your wife's car.
It's personal. Yeah.
Which is, scary.
But weirdos. I love our weirdos.
Well, the weirdos have been the reason why. Hello, Drab just says she doesn't like looking for Joe Rogan. People look for us. People download our app.
They have to work together.
They have to work. We don't like to put the shows in places they can find it.
They've been working so hard to get to.
They have. They certainly have. Although they just cannot figure out to email support@bigoandukes.com. They can't figure it out.
Any issues?
They just spray it all over the internet. How come no one's helping me? Well, we've told you. Please send it here. For the love of God. Can you imagine if someone just goes out of JCPenney's and they have pants they want to return and they're just screaming into the dumpster? Why can't I return these here?
I do feel, especially during these times, that the gratitude that we built this just because we were being selfish and narcissists, that we want to do something fun and special for ourselves.
Well, didn't know it would certainly be as profitable as it's been.
Well, we didn't know it was going to be successful.
Yeah.
Period. And I feel grateful that we still get to do this because.
Well, what are you going to do when Mike retires?
Me?
Well, that's a good question.
I honestly, on my end, I'll probably just continue. If Podcast Village is still rock and rolling, I'll just scale that guy up and do the best I can.
But we could also, if you weren't doing Mike's show, we could go back. This could be we've done this show on a more frequent basis in the past. Yeah. Now, we might not be able to, old Drabby, that's the problem, is that he's the one that would be the X factor there. But I think
we could do this show more frequently, I imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's a nice backup plan to have, and it's always there for us. And it's also, I think it provides, and I think Drab is right. I think the radio landscape is going to continue to change, and there might be opportunity there in the future as well. So we will see. Well, boys, this has been tremendous. Thank you for making the time. Was
Thanks
there
for
anything
having us
else?
on.
Is there anything else you wanted to
No,
touch
but I
on?
feel like this has got to be like part 1 or something.
You think so?
I think we barely scratched the surface.
Well, because Oscar and I showed up on time, and I've got to go.
I got here at the same time.
You did not.
I heard him
and
in
you're
the elevator.
Okay, but you understand that the producer is not supposed to get there. I don't want to be mean, and I want you to run it back into Jason Bishop's embrace.
I thought I was a guest.
The producer,
I thought I was a guest.
usually arrives in time to set up the equipment.
Let me put that on my resume. Producer of Radiofile.
You can go ahead and put that on your resume.
I didn't know I was.
Well, let me tell you something. When the zookeeper walks in, the monkeys don't think they're zookeepers. Are you saying that you've never been said anything like that by Jeff Flame?
I don't think so.
All right, boys. Thank you very much.
Ciao, ciao.